Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so excited to be continuing this project or this journey with you. If you haven't seen my previous video, you should literally go and watch it. This is a part 2 out of the very first project I'm working on. It's a beginner friendly project, and pretty much in my first video I actually talked about how I worked on scraping a website to get data needed for analyzing house rental prices here in Canada. And in this video, I'm going to be analyzing this data that we scraped using Microsoft Power BI. And it's literally a fun project, right? And why I did it was because I saw a need for it and I started to work on it and see how it plays, right? So I'm looking at the fact that you can actually get data, that's gathering your data from a particular data source, which in this case is our website, kijiji.ca, and then having to also use Google Sheets to help store our data, and also importing this data into Microsoft Power BI for analyzing and visualizing our reports as well. So I think one thing I also want to take note is that for any one person who actually work on this project, I would love to see what your result was, right? So that I could probably just analyze it and just like give some feedback as regards to what you've worked on in analyzing the data. So I'll walk you through as to how I started analyzing this data using Microsoft Power BI, visualizing data. One thing I did was I had to compare the prices, the most expensive house location as well too, how many beds were in each of these individual unique houses. Also, were they affordable or were they not affordable? The houses that we scraped were literally houses less than 2,000 CAD. And I can bet you that at the time when I first worked on this project, I think that was 2019 when I first worked on this project, most of the houses were about $700 to, I think the max houses was $1,000. But right now we're seeing houses pan across $2,000, $1,300. That's quite an amount. So that's why I felt a need for me to be able to group these price houses in different unique bins. So based on whether the house were affordable, whether they are priced, whether they're cheap. Now this is based on what you can afford. When I scraped the data, most of you would have found out that I didn't get the house bed, so the HTML tag, I didn't effectively fetch the number of house beds that were in each of these unique houses. But now in this video, I'm going to show you how I literally was able to get it out of the house name itself, right? So we're going to see how we're going to use Microsoft Power BI to get the house bed out of the house name. Join me as we go along in analyzing house rental prices here in Canada. So let's get started. I'm actually using a Mac to run my Microsoft Power BI, and that's because I actually do have Bootcamp installed on it. But ideally, I would say that if you really want to work with Microsoft Power BI for any of your analytical tools, I would 100% recommend you getting the Windows. I know that I did have someone ask about it, but in this case, I'm actually running the Bootcamp on my laptop, so I can run any Windows software on my Mac. So let's get started. So now let's get right into it, right? So we have our CSV file in our Excel sheet, and what we're going to do is that we're going to have it imported into Power BI as an Excel sheet, but then using Google Sheets for this purpose. And when doing this, it's important to ensure that you're exporting it as an XLX file and not just a web page, right? So we're going to put it in there as a data source and would import it. So we would go into get data and we'll bring it in as a web, right? A web file, and it imports the URL that we copied from our Google Sheets into our URL here. Important, it should have output equals to XLSX. Very important, please take note. If you're importing Google Sheets file, output should be equals to XLSX, right? Then after that, we're going to bring in the data. You can either decide to load it or transform the data, but in this case, we can load it and then move into transform the data. So I'll show you how to go about transforming the data essentially. So we do have 45 rows in here, and in doing this, there's an option called transform data at the top header. Would click it, and then it loads into our query editor, right? And then we are seeing the different column names and the column headers as well too. I removed the irrelevant column name that I didn't need, and then I'm also trying to ensure that I'm able to get in the house bed. So we can remember that when we brought in the house bed was actually null. It didn't have any data, but we're going to be able to get in the house bed based on the house name, and then you see how we go about doing it. So next up, I'm really just going to be checking through the data type across the different columns to ensure that they all align as it should, right? So the house price should be as a number, the house location should be as a text as well too. I think those are the relevant data types we need in this case. And then I would also do a lot of cleaning in here, transforming the data, trimming white spaces just to remove trading spaces that may be in the column when I was importing the data into Power BI. So I just go to transform and click on trim to remove all the white spaces essentially. So now the next step would be for me to split the house location based on a custom delimiter, and in this case I'm going to be using the less than delimiter. Now this is because in the house location we can see that it does have the house location as well as the time the house was posted on the Kijiji website, right? So what that means is I have my house location as one column, and I would have the time the house was posted, just for recency's sake, if I want to calculate that, if I want to analyze that as well too. So we can see in the house location there's Toronto, North York, Mississauga, East York, and the likes. And then in the other column we're going to be naming it time posted, and in here we see that we do have the different time it was posted, right? So that's 20 hours, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes ago, and the likes. But then again, we also have null values in there, and one of the many things that Power BI allows us to do is to also clean up null values. So I'm just going to be replacing these null values with 2 minutes ago. Now this because most of the columns that I'm seeing in there, or rather most of the columns that are in there are 2 minutes ago, so I just felt like it was best to have that replaced with the null values replaced with 2 minutes ago. So now we can see that our data looks pretty much clean, right? We're now going to be renaming the house location in the proper, just remove the one out of the house location and just name it as house location, pretty much. And that is about that for cleaning our data in the Power Query editor. Then up next, so now the next step would be for me to get the number of house beds. Remember, when we scraped the data, we didn't effectively get the house beds. That's the number of beds in the houses. So now the next step would be for me to have the house beds as a separate column, and now this by using a function called conditional column. So I would be going through my house name, or going through the house name and checking if the house name contains any of this value to give me the right output. So if it contains one bed, if it contains one bedroom, right? If it contains one BD, these are different values that literally signifies that the number of beds in the houses are either 1 or 2. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to be using a conditional column to check through each of these unique house name to get the required beds in the unique houses ultimately. One thing and also want you to take note of here is, even after getting the house beds, right, We still do have null values even after replacing the null values with 1. Now that's because we need to change the data type to a whole number or a decimal. So in this case I use a decimal, and immediately we can see that the house bed column looks clean. Up next, we are now going to compare the prices against our individual budgets. Some people may classify this house as being cheap, expensive, affordable. So based on what you earn or based on what your spending capacity is like, I decided to just have some sort of range to be able to understand how someone who wants to rent a house, like if it's affordable, if it's expensive, if it's pricey, if it is cheap. So I use certain buckets or certain bins, price bins in this case, to classify the range of prices for each of the house prices that was listed in the house in this case. So you can see that I'm using the house price, and I'm also going to use it based on certain filters. Now that we've seen that it seems like our data is clean, we can then load the data to start building out the respective analysis or report that we want to carry out. That's the beauty of being a data analyst, I must say. So I started by bringing in a text box and use the different visuals available for me. I use the text box as a title header for my reports. I think this is the very first step everyone should take. Later on in the video, I actually did edit the amount to 2000 CAD and not $200 CAD. Up next, I'm using a type of visualization called cards, and I really like using cards when I want to check the counts of
a particular quantity, or so in this case count of house beds, distinct count of different house location, distinct counts of even count of the number of houses that we actually did scrape. So I really like using the card visuals for this purpose. Then I also use a slicer to filter or to also check through the different price category I created. So based on the affordable houses, cheap apartments, expensive apartments, I use the slicer for this purpose. Up next, I also analyze the house prices by the different houses available. And one thing that I did in here was to also check through. So I used a color grading for this purpose, right? So to check through for the houses that were more affordable, that were more expensive, I used a darker color. And then for those that were pretty much, not so expensive, I use a lighter color. So this is just a distinct way for me to show whoever is looking at my report to know that this particular number of houses are more expensive compared to this particular type of houses. Then up next, I literally just did a common Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V to replicate the same visual I had for the top 5 most expensive apartments for me to analyze the top 5 most affordable apartments. I believe, was it affordable or cheap? I think either affordable or cheap was what I used, but I think it was affordable apartment. I believe that's what I was analyzing in the other tab in it. And what that meant was the same thing that I did have in the top 5 most expensive apartments. What I just had to change in here was to change the values in terms of the prices, and then I also renamed it and also did my color grading as well, to based on the most affordable apartments. So after all this has been done, I think it's just good for me to also find out the condition of the house, whether it's a new house, whether it's been renovated, whether it's an old apartment. So how I was able to find the house condition based on whether it's new, whether it's old,
or whether it's even renovated, is I went through the house name, and thankfully there's something called renovated or new. So I also then created an additional conditional column called house condition. So this will just let me know the condition or the state of the house. For some people, they like new house, right? So based on that, it's just good for them to filter out and check which house is new or which house is renovated. So wherever I see wherever there's new in the house name, I literally just made the column to be called new apartment. Then wherever it's also renovated, I think I also called it new. Else what I did was I named it as old apartment. So it was either any of these options. So going through, there are also other options like new, newly, which are also classified as new apartment, renovated, which are also classified as new apartment, upgrade, which are also classified as new apartment, while I classified the remaining one as old apartment. And then I just carried out my filter just to be sure that every one of them were giving me what they should. And yeah, I think it's quite case sensitive, so you have to ensure you're using either caps or small letter as it's seen on the column itself.
And then, as usual, change your data type to the right data type to avoid errors.
So next up, I was pretty much just doing some rearranging, I believe. So I was just ensuring that the different visuals on the dashboard was just well aligned. So ensuring that my text box, my slicer, the cards, each of these unique visuals were just well aligned together appropriately. So I was just arranging it to create space, and because I needed to add other visuals as well to analyzing the house data. I mean, one thing we can see here is that this looks more well detailed in some sense. I can see the top 5 most affordable apartments. I can see the top 5 most expensive apartments. I can even see the prices as well too, right? And I can see the different house locations that are also in this data. So these are many things that PowerBI or any visualization tool or analytics tool can actually help us to do, to see the different unique values and also make sense out of the data that we've scraped, right? So I just went ahead to do all this and create more visuals with the space that I do have in there to analyze data in my Power BI report. So yeah, the house condition that we created now comes into play. So I'm going to use a donut chart to also find out what number of houses are considered as old houses and what number of houses are considered as new apartment based on the prices. So this just gives me a rough idea
as to the number of houses that are considered as new apartment or old apartment. So after that, I just went ahead to do some basic editing, clean up the text, the font size, the font style, aligning them all together, selecting what type of font style to use, the color, just nice aesthetics pretty much, right? And going through each of the unique visuals as well to ensure that they all align accordingly as it should be. So next up, I'll just go ahead to rename that house price by house condition to house price by house location. So this just shows us the most expensive house rental locations in Canada, right? So this just shows us the different analysis we can carry out, and I'm just going through the different visuals to ensure that they all align together as they should based on different filters.
So thank you so much guys for watching. I really do hope that along the way you all learned one or two things, maybe in trimming your data, removing white spaces, how to create conditional columns, how to use certain visuals on Microsoft Power BI as well too. If there's something that you literally learned working on this project, please be sure to comment. I really want to know what your experience was actually working on this project. And also, I'm so glad to have you join me on my channel today. Please ensure to like as usual. Also subscribe and comment as well too. See you guys in my next video. Bye for now. Bye.